so my name's Matt. I appreciate y'all too for coming in. What we're going to be talking about today is we're going to start with just an overview on how to design a butterfly garden. From there, we'll go into probably like 11 of the most common butterflies we'll see in this area with pictures of them and a little bit about them so we know how to identify what we're seeing now. And then we'll finish just by talking about the life cycle of the black swallowtail. Yeah, so if you decide to raise them your own, you'll know how to kind of do that as well. All right, so the way I have designed my butterfly garden in the past, and what I think is probably the best way to approach it, is we're going to imagine that we are making a restaurant for a butterfly, is what we're going to do today. And what I'm going to be doing is specifically opening up a pizza place for butterflies, is how I'm going to approach it. So the first thing in any restaurant, really, one of the most important things is the location, right? So in a restaurant, you want a spot that has a lot of foot traffic, or driving by. You want a spot where people are going to see it. How that translates into like a butterfly garden is you want a lot of flight traffic. That's what you're trying to put your garden in, right in the middle of where things are flying by. So what that translates to in terms of where we should be putting our garden is in an area that is as open as possible. So that means open on all sides if we can, and open above, so no trees covering it, things like that. Obviously, if we're in an area that's usually open all around, that means we're going to be in full sun as well. Most plants that butterflies like are going to want full sun. All that being said, you don't have to put it in a spot that's out in the open. Not all yards have spots that have spaces where you can just put a garden right in the middle. You can put them along a fence. You can put them in corners. It's ideal to have as many sides open as possible and a top open just for the flight, but not necessary. You can also do a part sun butterfly garden. There are some options that will still bloom in part sun. What's very hard to do though would be like a shade butterfly garden in a smaller enclosed area. You're just not going to find a lot of plants for that. You're not going to get a lot of butterfly traffic in that area, and it just wouldn't be the right kind of spot for something like this. But since we're doing a butterfly garden, and since I'm opening a pizza place for butterflies, I am putting my restaurant right in the middle of the yard, basically. That's going to give me the most amount of customers flying over the top, and it'll allow for the widest range of plants or pizzas that I can serve to these butterflies. All right, so to start out, there's a lot of different ways of running a pizza shop, right? There's so many different types. There's big ones, small ones, all different kinds. You could technically take 100 pintas, call these pepperoni pinta pizzas, and just plant 100 pintas out there. And that would technically, in a nice big mass, that would technically be a butterfly garden. You're going to get more butterflies. You're going to see a somewhat of maybe 2 to 3 different types that enjoy this kind of thing. You won't get a wide range of different butterflies, but you'll definitely get more, and you'll maybe see some you haven't seen in the past. In restaurant terms, I could just serve pepperoni pizza. That's it. I'll have plenty of customers that like pepperoni pizza. I could run a successful business that way, but it's not going to be the best I could do if I'm trying to get as many customers as possible. If I want as many customers as possible, I need pepperoni pizza, I need supreme pizza, I need vegetarian pizza, I need all the different kinds of pizza to get the most types of customers. So how that translates into our butterfly garden, the more different varieties of blooming things that you have, the more different types of butterflies you're going to attract. I generally like to have at least 5 different types of blooms kind of all going at the same time. That's going to give a wide range of a meal for all the different types of butterflies that show up. But any more than that's just going to add to the experience as well. Okay, so now that we know the area where we want to put stuff, we know the materials that we need need a good supply of menu items as well. Now let's think about kind of the quantities of things that we need. We could technically just make 2 pizzas a day, a couple different types, serve those customers, and be done. And that could be a business as well. Or if we want to do a little bit better, we need to have a lot of pizzas ready. We need to have a lot of plants blooming at the same time, so that way we can serve more butterflies. So whenever you're picking out plants to put in your garden, don't just pick one. Some people have the habit of seeing a lot of different things that they like, picking one of each and then planting that. That will work, it'll be okay, but what butterflies look for are for groups. They look for group plantings, they look for mass plantings. They don't notice as well just one bloom sticking out. What they notice is a big swath of bloom sticking out. So that's what we need to aim for. So we need multiples of the items that we're serving. From a design standpoint, generally people like to work in odd numbers. So that means picking plants in pairs of 3s, pairs of 5s, pairs of 9s, so on and so on. So now that we know what we're going to be serving, we know where our location is, we know kind of the amount of materials that we need to make these pizzas and serve the butterflies. Next, let's talk about kind of the hours of our operation in business terms. So in the pizza example, I could be a restaurant that's only serving lunchtime, right? I could get a good crowd during lunch. I'm a successful, I could do pretty successful that way, but I'm not capturing all the customers I could capture by just staying open those hours. So how that translates into butterfly gardening is we don't only want just what's in bloom right now, where we're seeing butterflies out and what's in bloom. We need things that are in bloom all year long. So that's how we're going to capture the most amount of customers that way. So that means planting things that you see in a nursery setting that look pretty right now, but also planting for things that really aren't in bloom right now, that might also be kind of hard to find in nursery settings right now. But keep that in mind when you are laying out your garden, that you don't want things that are just blooming all spring. You want things that are blooming right now in the spring. You want things that are blooming in the summer. And then you want things that are blooming in the fall as well. And that'll capture the most amount of butterflies to the garden if you have blooms that are open the most amount of time. Okay, so now that we know what plants we're using, now that we know kind of how many that we need, things like that, let's talk about what it would be in terms of the restaurant. It would be the dining experience. But in terms of the butterflies, it's going to be what they like to feed on. So whenever you go into a restaurant, there are usually different types of seating arrangements, right? There's some people that like to sit at maybe like a tall bar top table when they eat. Maybe a group of people came in, they want to sit at a more lower booth. And then maybe let's say we have kids too that like to sit at the kids table. That same kind of idea and concept translates into the butterfly garden. There's going to be some butterflies that will only feed on plants that are up high. They're not ever going to check out the stuff in the middle and below, and vice versa. There's going to be some that only want plants that are down low. They'll never check out the stuff that's up high. So we need to make sure we are having not only a good selection of plants, we need to make sure we have a lot of those same plants. We need to make sure that their blooms are at different heights in the sky so that we're serving the max amount of butterflies that we can. So now that we have, this is going to be hard, I'm going to have to take this off. Now that we have an understanding of what we're building here, I'm going to lay out a few plants on how I would do it, and this will kind of give you an idea of how to design a garden as well, okay? In a garden, it is usually nice to have plants that are your anchor plants. Some people call them anchor plants or your staple plants. These are plants that no matter the time of the year, they pretty much look the same. So when everything else is going dormant or changing, this is your consistency. One that I like to use for that is called Abelia. Abelia is one that butterflies love. But not only that, it helps with the consistency that I'm going for by being a somewhat evergreen, so it's this look for most of the year. If our winters get real bad, it might drop some leaves. But this is kind of what I'm going to use as my anchors in the garden to keep consistency throughout the year. I'm just going to kind of make a line of them. And since I'm limited on space, some of these are going to be placed much closer than you generally want to. Just keep that in mind. I forgot to mention, this part here, we've already gone over everything that the butterflies are looking for. They don't really care about how this stuff is laid out in terms of the aesthetics of it. They care more so for mass plantings of things. As long as you have that and have what they're looking for, you don't really got to worry about them in terms of when you're laying this out. What this is here is, this is for your eye appeal. That's all you need to be thinking about when you're designing this part. In restaurant terms, the customers don't really go to our restaurant because the building looks real nice. They go because they're there for the food, right? This is just kind of the curb appeal. That's all we're doing for this, really. All right, so we got our 3 anchor points here. These would be considered kind of your medium tables, your booth type tables. They're not up high, they're not down real low. So this is your medium type tables in that analogy. Butterfly bush, obviously it's in their name. It's one of their favorite things to feed on. Now, these right now is considered middle feeders, but as they grow, you know, they'd be considered one of the ones that are the higher feeders for the butterflies. This is a Augusta Goldberg salvia. This is one I personally have in my garden that I like a lot just because of the way it looks, the height that it gives you. Now, one thing we didn't really go over, but it's nice to maybe incorporate. There are a lot of Texas natives that you can use for feeding the butterflies. One of my favorites are salvia. Another one that they love a lot are black-eyed Susans. And you'll notice, at the very least, I'm doing pairings of 3. That way I'm getting a nice swath of things, rather than just a little dot. Okay, so I got Texas natives in there right now. The black-eyed Susan is going to get pretty large over time. Maybe I want this kind of in this area to match with these a little. The salvias are kind of right in that middle range. So next, after I have some natives in there that are taking up space, I'm going to start thinking about things that really I like the look of, that I want to put in the garden. Not so much for the butterflies. I know the butterflies like it, but I like looking at it while I'm putting it in. All right. So we got things that I like the look of. We got Texas natives in there. We got some nice staple things that are going to look that way all year long. We got nice heights. We have nice color, nice range of colors that we have in our blooms. It's not just all one color. It's hard to figure out what color butterflies like the best, but from what I've read, it seems like yellows, pinks, whites, maybe purples. They say to avoid blues, but I have found this is somewhat blue, and it seems to be one of their more favorite plants. There's also another one called Gregg's Blue Mist Flower that I know butterflies love, especially monarchs. So don't go, you know, you don't have to go too hard on the rule of what color they like. They like all colors too. So I got a good base now. The next part is I'm going to add in things that they're not native. Maybe I don't really enjoy the look of them so much. You know, maybe it's not my favorite, but they are plants that I know butterflies go to more so than most other things. So an example of that, pincushion flower. Some people love it. I don't know. I don't like the look of it so much. It's just a little unruly. But this is one of their favorites. A good little tip on picking out flowers for butterflies. Anything that has a pad to where they can land on like this, or something like this, is going to be something that they will just stop on almost automatically. These are called yarrows. These are a nice hardy perennial. Comes back very, very easy. It can take it likes full sun, but it can take part sun as well if you don't have full sun. And this just flocks. Butterflies love flocks. Okay, look at this. We are covering all of our criteria. We have a good selection of plants. So we have a lot of different menu items basically. We have not only just one of everything, we got multiples of everything, so we can serve multiple butterflies, not just one or two. We have a good source of natives, so that's going to be easier to take care of, less water, things like that. The butterflies are used to seeing that kind of stuff in this area already. It's native plants. We have a good anchored base of things. These three plants aren't really going to change all that much throughout the year, so our garden has a nice consistent look. And we have the different levels of things as well. So we have high blooms, medium blooms, low blooms. We've kind of hit all the points that we need to hit in order to serve the butterflies as best we can. The next part. So my garden, my pizza shop, I'm specifically going after swallowtail butterflies. So if I want swallowtail butterflies, I will get them. I'll see them, you know, based off of what I planted here. They will show up. There's plenty of stuff for them to like here. But I want to grow my own swallowtail butterflies. I want to get as many as I can. And the way we do that is by introducing host plants to our garden. For the black swallowtail, their host plants, I'm going to be moving. Their host plants are mainly fennel and dill, parsley and rue. What I have found is that they seem to like the fennel the best out of everything. But you can plant all this in the same area, You know, one might lay on the roux, most might lay on the fennel, one might lay on the dill. Is kind of what I found. But they will use all of this. Maybe we got some dill and fennel mixed in all in between there. The roux that I'm about to put out, that could maybe be considered a perennial. I have some of that coming back to me year after year. Most of this other stuff, though, once a freeze hits it, it's done. All right, so this right here is kind of how I would probably incorporate a post plant area. Like I said, you could mix it in if you like to look at that better. What I found seems like the butterflies like a designated spot to kind of do their laying the eggs rather than where they eat, stuff like that. So now that we have that, specifically for black swallowtails, I could add in a few other things that are host plants, not just for black swallowtails, but for other butterflies as well. These are mallows. Mallows are a host plant for a good wide range of butterflies. So maybe I just want to throw these in my little host plant area as well, just to add something in more, add a little bit different texture, and attract different butterflies besides just one. So that is technically a butterfly garden there. That will give you everything you need to get the widest range of butterflies. It'll give you everything you need to start growing your own butterflies too if you want. There are two other things you can add though that don't have to do with plants at all, and they can make a drastic difference in the amount of butterflies that you have. So we're going to talk about those right now. The first thing is so now we have, you know, food for the butterflies. I got tons of pizza for them, but I don't have anything for them to drink yet. So now I need to figure out a way to serve them beverages. The best way to do that, really what they need is just something that will absorb moisture without being like a puddle or anything. They don't like to walk in deep water, but the way they taste and feel is with their feet. So they like to feel moisture on their feet. They don't want deep moisture. So the way you achieve that, there's many ways. What I like to do is just get a little saucer from a pot. You probably have these just laying around in the backyard. I fill mine with expanded shell. You could use any kind of rock though, pea gravel, sand, whatever you want to use. Fill it up. Okay, what to fill it up with? Any kind of water is going to work great. If you can avoid tap water, that's best, just like the plants, same kind of concept. Rainwater is going to be good, filtered water, things like that. I like Topo Chico. This is a good, high quality water. It has a high source of minerals in it, and that's really what the butterflies are after. They're going for minerals, what they want. So, you don't want to fill this up to where it's really overflowing. You just want to get it to where it's saturated. If there's any kind of puddling, and if they land on this and they feel like they're getting wet, they won't stay. They'll just fly right off. They don't like to get their wings wet, really. So you'll notice, I might try to, any excess water I'm trying to get off. I really just want it to where it feels like it's a wet rock, really, and that's it. Now, besides Topo Chico, you can use Gatorade, you can use honey water, you can use juices diluted, you know, any kind of regular organic juice, dilute it some, they'll take that. You can even use beer. Butterflies like the Red Admiral, they are very much attracted to like a nice hoppy beer. So you can put some beer in there. They get a good amount of nutrients from the beer is why they're attracted to it. Nutrients and sugars, that's what they're going for when they're going for things like this. So how would we place this? Normally you would want multiple of these if you can. And it is best to place them all throughout your body. Not necessarily buried in the plants where they're hard to get to, more so kind of off to the side, out in the open. But the more of these you have, the better experience of butterflies you're going to have. Imagine if you're at a restaurant and there is only one little tiny spot to get drinks from and everyone has to go there. It's better if you have more options. So now that they have something to drink, another thing you can do, and this is kind of more of a treat. You can set out rotting fruit. As the fruit rots, it releases sugars and all kinds of good stuff, and that's what the butterflies like. Good fruits to use can be things like bananas, apples, watermelons, things to maybe stay away from. They don't necessarily like citrus as much as that I'm aware, so maybe not like limes, lemons, things like that. Another thing is as the fruit rots, it is fermenting. and the butterflies can get a little drunk off that too. So if you want to get butterflies drunk, you put some of this out and watch them fly around all kind of goofy. It doesn't hurt them, it's not bad for them, but you will notice that they are acting a little different if they've been eating a lot of this, for sure. Okay, so we have all the food that they could eat, we have all the drinks that they could ever want, we have nice little treats for them in the form of rotting fruit. There is one last thing we can put in the garden that doesn't have anything to do with food or water or anything else. This is just something that we are adding in to help, more so for us in my opinion. This is going to be a spot where butterflies congregate. I like to think of it as a spot for socializing and things like that. That's what I'm opening up in my restaurant. It's a nice little lounge area. What this is a basking stone. A basking stone is any kind of stone material or a statue or any kind of just solid object placed in the sun to where the butterflies can land on it, open their wings, and absorb sun. They need to heat up their bodies to fly. So you will see that a lot of times, especially early in the morning, most butterflies will just be on a solid object in the sun, just with their wings open. Where to place this in the garden is what I found is place it in an area. So I like to take pictures of butterflies. Place these things in an area where you want to be taking a picture, where it's easy to access. You'll get multiple different butterflies on your basking stones at the same time. It's also a good area to notice different flight behaviors. So you might have a male and female kind of hanging out on the same stone. That might lead to mating flights or flirting type flight patterns that you get to see. Those usually happen over the basking area. You get to see territorial type flight patterns usually over basking areas as well. So it's just a nice little thing to add more entertainment in our perspective in the garden, but also to give an area for the butterflies to relax, maybe socialize, things like that. Yeah, with problem with ants is what you're saying?
Yeah.
That is going to happen. One thing that can kind of help mitigate that is you can take your rotting fruit thing, set it on your basket area, get it up off the ground somehow. That'll help a little. But ants are going to have to, yeah, it's unavoidable. Anytime there's rotting fruit outside, ants will probably get to it. Just keep an eye on it. You don't want ants getting onto the butterflies.
Right, that's what I said.
Yes. Yeah, so if you do see ants starting to get on there, maybe get them off, start a new one, something like that. Okay, so now we are going to go over 11 of the most common butterflies we're probably going to see in this area. Okay, so starting off with my favorite one, just in terms of the beauty of it, how easy it is to raise, how often you see it. This is what a black swallowtail looks like. This is the one that we planted our host garden for. All of those plants are going to attract this butterfly. It's a larger one in terms of, the overall size of butterflies are easy to see. Flight pattern's more of like a glide rather than kind of spastic. Black is usually the first thing you're going to notice with the yellow kind of banding at the bottom. That's usually what your eye picks up to see. The eggs, very small, maybe about half the size of like a donut sprinkle. They are yellowish orange, and like I said, generally on fennel is where you'll find them. And not always, but towards the tips of the fennel plant is where I seem to find them. Not necessarily in the middle of the plant. As the caterpillar emerges, it starts out black and has like spines on it. It kind of looks like it's one you're not supposed to touch. It's okay to touch though, the spines don't hurt you. And then as it ages, it turns into like a green striped looking one. Next is the giant swallowtail. Very similar to the black swallowtail, but you'll notice more yellow in it, and it is going to be bigger than the black swallowtail as well. Got a picture of what the egg looks like and what the adult form caterpillar. This is kind of mid-stage. All right, next up is the Gulf fritillari. I think I'm saying that right. Gulf fritillari. This is a medium-sized butterfly. It's a orange one. What you'll normally notice is kind of this metallic-looking underside to the wing. That's what usually catches your eye. It's another one that has a caterpillar that looks like it's poisonous, but it's okay to touch. Those aren't going to hurt you at all. And its favorite host plant I found is the passion vine. Here's what the monarch looks like. I'm sure everyone's very familiar with this one. This is one of the more famous butterflies. It is considered a larger type butterfly. It has orange. Mainly the orange is what people notice out of anything else. And kind of like a striped zebra kind of underskin is what people like to say about it as well. The caterpillar, like you said, is very similar to the look of the black swallowtail. That one, and the egg, it looks very similar to the black swallowtail as well. The last one we have is the question mark butterfly. This is a pretty unique one just based on the shape of the wing. That's most likely what you're going to notice first out of the color or anything else, is just how different the wing looks compared to other butterflies. The host plant for the question marks are mainly trees, so they like the elms, they like the hackberry trees. They will also use nettles though too as well. But in the past where I've raised these has been on elms and hackberries. That's where I normally get those. And like most of the other ones, it looks like the caterpillar saying, "Don't touch me, I have spines," but they're not going to hurt you. You can pet them if you want to. So now we've gone over our garden. Now that we have our garden set up and we're starting to get butterflies, we now know the names of the butterflies that we're starting to see there. Let's quickly go over how to raise swallowtails. If we decide we're having a good time, we're enjoying seeing the butterflies, now we want more. So let's go over how to do that. So, the swallowtail, the black swallowtail, generally will start laying eggs this time of year for the most part, and going in for the next couple months you should get egg production. They will only lay, from what I can tell, a few eggs per plant. The mother has many eggs on her, but she only likes to put a couple per plant. I think the reason for that is if she were to lay all of her eggs on one plant, obviously that one plant is not going to support that whole family. So that's another reason why it helps to have multiples of things. Because the more host plants you're going to have, the more likely the mother butterfly is going to lay more eggs. So now that
it's also going to just make it less likely that all of her eggs get destroyed.
Yes, that is a good point.
That if the plant dies for some reason, she'll lose her entire
Exactly.
So
one stat I read, and this came up multiple times when I was doing a little bit of research for this, is it said that on average, most butterfly eggs, there's about a 1 to 5% success rate of them going from being out in the wild, from being laid on a host plant and actually making it to where they are now a butterfly again. One of the examples pointed, I forget what butterfly they used, but their test was they had 500 eggs that they counted out in nature, and they had around 2% of those actually make it to adulthood and turn into a butterfly. So that is another reason why it's important to have as many host plants as possible, because their survival rates aren't that great. And what leads to that is there's predatory wasps that once the caterpillar gets big, they'll feed on the caterpillar. When they're small, storms can kind of knock them onto the ground. They don't find their way back onto the plant. They die that way. Birds, for the most part, should be leaving them alone. Most of these have a weird enough color to where birds are a little bit scared of them. But every now and then you'll get birds that'll still try them out to see what they are. So that's how they disappear, basically. Okay, so now that we have swallowtail eggs, most likely on our fennel, at the tips of the fennel plant is usually where you're going to find them. After we've observed one, after they've laid one, from there, in about 3 to 9 days, the caterpillar will hatch. Once the caterpillar hatches, it's going to start by eating the egg it was in. After it eats that, it's going to start on the host plant. For up to the next 30 days, it could be feeding, so keep that in mind. You could have a caterpillar that you're needing to provide fennel for 30 days from now. If it looks like the caterpillar is 15 days old and you're at 5 more days of fennel, that's when you might start thinking, okay, I need to go buy some more fennel if I want to keep these things going. So during that 30 days of feeding time, what they're going to do is go through 5 different stages called instars. And what that is just as they're eating, they're getting bigger, and they are basically outgrowing their body. So they have to shed the old body to fit into the new one. And each of those is called an instar. So in terms of the swallowtail, how that's going to look, they're going to start out as a very, very almost hard to see tiny little black bug is what it's going to look like. You can't even really tell it's a caterpillar. From there, they're going to start to increase in size. As they age, they're going to go from being black to, like that show, to more of a green color. And then they max out at about 2 inches or so in length. During this time, they are going to mainly stay on the host plant. They don't really go for much of a journey. They might go up and down and all around the host plant, but the only time they're ever going to come off that host plant is probably because they got knocked off by something. They normally want to stay on the host plant. As they approach the time where they're starting to get ready to go into their chrysalis, generally, not all of them, but generally, most will leave the host plant and go find somewhere else to start making their chrysalis. Now, what I like to do is anytime that I notice an egg on a host plant, I go ahead and I bring it in. I like to bring the things in, take a cutting, put it in your Topo Chico bottle, raise it in there. As the thing ages, it will mainly just stay right in that, right in that area. You might want to put like a paper plate under it to catch some of the droppings that they're going to be making. That is also just a fertilizer though too. So any of that stuff I collect, I just throw it right back into the garden and it works great like that. As they get closer and closer to when they're actually going to turn into a chrysalis, it is smart to put them in something that they can leave that host plant from. If you're bringing them inside, put them in something that they can kind of leave the host plant from and go hang on and start to make their chrysalis. I have purchased just what they're called, it's just insect bags or butterfly bags. It's just a net bag basically that you can zip up. You don't have to buy those. I've used in the past a laundry basket. That's kind of that same material, right? Just turn that upside down and put it on top of the host plant. They just need something that they can crawl on, kind of get comfortable, and then start to make their chrysalis. If you don't have that, what I found is you don't know where they're going to go, and like a few weeks later, you'll open your closet and you'll find one somewhere in the closet, something like that. So it's nice to kind of keep them enclosed. So now that they are in their chrysalis, from that point on, it can take anywhere from 9 to 20 days for them to go from being inside there to coming out and emerging as a butterfly. The cool thing about black swallowtails, though, is they don't really go through a migration process. What they have is a dormancy process. Some of them have a dormancy process during their chrysalis stage. So if you are bringing them in to kind of raise on your own, what you will find, and one of my favorite things, is you'll have a lot of chrysalis, all getting ready at the same time, because they're all maybe from that same family of eggs. Let's say I have 10 chrysalises that are going to open in the next 3 days or so. All of those go off just, without a hitch. Then I might have 1 or 2 that for whatever reason doesn't do anything at all. And then several months later, with it just sitting inside, that thing will come out just randomly. And kind of make us surprise you, really. So those ones, you'll kind of notice those are generally going to be, the chrysalis is going to be green. It kind of has 2 points on the top and a point at the bottom, and kind of points along its back or ridge, but mainly all green. The ones that seem to want to overwinter more are more of a brown color. That's not always true. I've had some green ones that open months later, and also brown ones that open at the same time green ones have. So it's not a rule to stay by, but it's just kind of a general rule. All right, well, I appreciate y'all's time.
Thanks, man.